There used to be a great town. Holy shit, that's a lot of people.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to a very special SMITE World Championship edition of Know Your Enemy. If you haven't seen this series before, in each episode we take an in-depth look at a specific god. For instance, today we're going to be talking about ISIS. So by the end of this video, if you're a beginner, you should at least know how to handle yourself when you find an ISIS on the enemy team. Now, odds are, if you're here in Atlanta for the SMITE World Championships, you probably know enough about how to play against an ISIS where you probably don't need to watch this video, but there are some of you out there who still need some help. Especially that guy. No, the one in the blue. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the guide. Again, today we're going to be talking about Isis, the goddess of magic. Alright, so the first thing we always look at in these videos is a graph that shows a visual representation of what that specific god is good at. Obviously, today we're looking at Isis. So the first thing that stands out is obviously her damage, utility, and control are on the upper ends of the graph. Her mobility and defense are on the lower ends of the graph, but she does actually show something on the graph for healing. Obviously, if a god does not have any healing abilities, they will show nothing on this graph. So it's always nice to see a god that has at least a little bit of everything and still excels in one or two areas. And now that we know where Isis stands on the graph, let's go ahead and take a look at her abilities and figure out why the graph looks this way. Now, when we talk about the abilities, we always assume that you at least know how the abilities work, so you've at least done your due diligence and looked up the abilities of the god to see exactly how they operate. Or at least you've played enough against the god where you can kind of see an ability coming and know a little bit about what that ability does. So now that you kind of understand how this section of the video is going to flow, let's go ahead and talk about Isis's passive, Funeral Rites. This is a very simple passive. Essentially, when an enemy dies within range of Isis, she gains 1 stack. She can have up to 10 stacks, and each of those stacks gives her and all of the allies around her 2 HP 5 and 2 MP 5 per stack for a total of up to 20 HP 5 and 20 MP 5. Now, the drawback to this ability is that she loses all of her stacks when she dies. Now, this passive can be really important in a game mode like Assault, where HP 5 and MP 5 are more important because you can't go back to the well and regain your health and mana. Also, Isis can gain these stacks a lot faster than you might think because she does not have to specifically get the kill. So while this passive is not game-breaking by any stretch of the imagination, it does actually help out more than you think when it comes to healing and sustain. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about Isis's first ability, Wing Gust. At first glance, this is just an ability that shoots out 4 projectiles. However, there are many subtle nuances to this ability that you would not know about unless you read the description very carefully. So, in addition to her shooting out 4 projectiles, the entire time she's doing that, she is channeling the ability, meaning that at any time during that ability, she can be interrupted by a stun or a silence and knock her out of it. That is a big advantage for you if you're playing against Isis, and a big disadvantage for you if you're playing as Isis. Now also, while she's channeling this ability, she gains a 25% movement speed increase and is immune to the backpedal penalty, meaning that she goes as fast backwards as she does forwards. Now, the addition of the 25% movement speed increase and the fact that she can move as fast backwards as she does forwards mean that while she's channeling this ability, she can actually be kind of hard to hit. During this ability, she moves in a way that a lot of the other gods in the game can't or don't move. Now again, in addition to that, still, she's immune to root and knockback effects while she's channeling. So you can start to see why her utility on that graph was so high. A lot of her abilities do a ton of things. Now let's talk about her second ability called Spirit Ball. Now when I'm watching new players play Isis, the one thing I notice is that they don't understand that once Isis casts this ability, she can detonate that ability at any time, meaning that you can let it run its full course and go its maximum distance, or at any time while the ball is traveling, you can detonate it to pop it early. Now the one thing you need to know about that is that the further the ball travels, the more damage it does and the longer it stuns, up to a maximum of 1.5 second stun and 50% extra damage. Other than those two things, it's a fairly straightforward ability. Now let's talk about our third ability, Dispel Magic. This ability does no damage, but this is where Isis is going to gain a lot more utility. A lot like Wing Gust, this is one of those abilities where if you haven't read the description, you're like, huh, she silenced me. I guess that's all that does. However, it's also going to slow you for 35% and steal your magical protection. What that means is you're going to lose magical protection and Isis is going to gain magical protection. So again, a silence, a slow, you lose magic protection, she gains it, tons of utility in this ability. And then her ultimate, Circle of Protection, and again, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this word by now, but it gives her a ton of utility. It does a massive amount of damage, a decent amount of healing, but the one thing that a lot of people forget about this ability, when you or any of your teammates are in the area of effect of Circle of Protection, you all take 15% less damage. There is a 15% damage reduction on Circle of Protection, so don't forget that. And Circle of Protection has a lot of other uses, which we will discuss here very shortly in the mechanics section. Alright, so if you haven't seen this series before, in the mechanics section, what we're going to do is discuss a few tips that are going to help you play against an Isis. Now, if you want to play Isis yourself, then make sure you reverse these tips and use them to your advantage. Now remember, this is not all of the information on Isis. These are just some of the tips that I think are the most important when you're facing her on the enemy team. First off, let's talk about Wing Gust. Now remember, I said it can be interrupted. Essentially, if you interrupt an Isis as she is using her Wing Gust, that completely eliminates 90% of her wave clear. So save your stuns and your silences and your mesmerizes or anything that's going to interrupt a channeled ability for when Isis starts using her Wing Gust. This is a surefire way to keep her in her tower losing gold. Now, if you do not have a way to interrupt her Wing Gust, understand that Wing Gust itself is a very powerful wave clearing ability. By level 4-ish, she can clear an entire wave with one Wing Gust. There are a lot of other probably statistically better mages that can't clear a wave that early, so this is a very strong ability if it is not interrupted. Now moving on to her second ability, Spirit Ball. First off, the projectile of this ability moves extremely slowly, but the detonation point of this ability is actually fairly large. So while this is a slow moving ability, it's surprisingly tricky to dodge. One thing you might see a good Isis do is to wait until you start auto-attacking. Therefore, you have now slowed yourself due to the movement speed reduction during auto-attacks, making the Spirit Ball much easier to hit. Depending on the distance that Isis is trying to hit you with that Spirit Ball, it may be an impossibility for you to get out of the detonation range if you are auto-attacking. Now be very careful getting hit by Isis's Spirit Ball because this is one of her two setup abilities. Isis can smack you with a Spirit Ball and then as you're coming out of the stun, hit you with Dispel Magic to silence and slow you, making for an absolutely nasty gank. If she's playing mid and her jungler is just waiting in the wings in the jungle ready for her to hit that Spirit Ball, there's a very good chance you're not going to get out of that gank. Now she can also use those abilities in reverse order, and actually that makes her Spirit Ball easier to hit. She can silence and slow you, and then as you are coming out of the silence, she can hit you with the Spirit Ball for the stun, essentially doing the exact same thing. If she's within range of the Dispel Magic, it makes sense for her to use her Dispel Magic first because she's going to get a damage bonus due to the fact that she's reducing your magical protections with Dispel Magic. However, she may be out of range of Dispel Magic and have to use her Spirit Ball to make up the distance that it's going to have to travel to hit you. Now, while we're on that topic, remember, the further the Spirit Ball travels, the more damage it's going to do and the longer you're going to be stunned. So a max range Spirit Ball can be absolutely devastating. But from Isis's point of view, that can be very hard to do if the person you're attacking is paying attention. Now, since we're kind of mixing abilities back and forth talking about Spirit Ball and Dispel Magic, I do want to touch on one thing about Dispel Magic. At max rank, this ability steals 30% protections. Now, Isis steals that 30% protections from every single person she hits, meaning that if she happens to hit all 5 of your party members, she's going to gain a 150% increase in her magical protections. Now, in addition to that, she also gains magical protections from any minions or creep camps that she may hit. So in a teamfight game mode like Arena, where there's a large clusters of enemies, both minion and god, she can easily gain 100 to 200 magic protections in a split second. Now let's move on and talk about her ultimate, Circle of Protection. As I said during the discussion of the abilities, this ability can be used in several different ways. First off, this can be used as a finisher. How many times have you been in a scenario where you're just getting ready to get a kill and right before that last auto attack hits, it slips through your fingers and the god gets away? This ability has decent range on it, and it's got a massive size, so it reaches much further than your auto attack. So if you've used all of your abilities and you can't just get that last hit on that god, you can throw down Circle of Protection, pop it early, and get the kill. Now that might seem like a waste because you're not gaining the heal from it, you're not gaining the damage reduction from it, but in that scenario, it's used just like any other damaging ult to finish off a god. In addition to that, it can be used as a nuke in a team fight because when you throw Circle of Protection down in a team fight, there's going to be so much damage going around, the ult's going to charge extremely quickly. As soon as that ult hits max charge, you can pop it, doing mass damage to all enemies and mass healing to all allies in the area, and that will definitely turn the tides of that battle. It can also be used to help get objectives like, say, the Fire Giant. Right before the Fire Giant uses his lava ability, you can throw down Circle of Protection, reducing the damage of the lava, charging it up very quickly because everybody in there is taking damage, popping it once it hits max charge to not only deal massive damage to the Fire Giant, but it'll also heal all of the allies that took damage from the lava. And last but not least, it can be used as a very effective zoning tool because nobody wants to step into the large glowing circle. So if you happen to be running from a gank, you don't have a lot of mobility, so you might just want to stay and fight. Throw your Circle of Protection down, stun them, use your Wing Gust, let it fill up a little bit, pop it to deal damage to the person who's chasing you and heal you, hopefully silence them to get away, or that might kill them. So it can be used defensively as well as offensively. And last but not least, remember that Isis does not have a lot of escape. The only thing that Isis has is the ability to stop you from getting to her. She can silence you, she can stun you, she can zone you a Circle of Protection, but she does have a 25% movement increase from Wing Gust. So, when Isis's Wing Gust is on cooldown, remember that unless she has Combat Blink or Sprint, she will only be as fast as regular walking speed. So there are definite chances to take advantage of her low mobility. So there you have it, guys. That's about it for the video. If you are a beginner, hopefully this video has helped you out a little bit, and now you know what to do when you see an Isis on the enemy team. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SMITEGame, and check out the rest of the series. At the creation of this video, we had 10 to 12 other videos you can check out, so go learn, you crazy kids. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day at the SMITE World Championships.